hard times, as a majority of them have not received salaries for the last 4 months due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. Apart from teachers in private schools, teachers employed by boards of management in public schools have also not been paid. The issue is set to get worse since the government, through Education CS George Magoha, says schools can only reopen next year. They say the government should, as a matter of urgency, provide a stimulus package so teachers can sustain themselves as well as their families. Some of them from Mombasa spoke about their problems. Let's listen in.
Na kufunga shule kwa ajili ya huu ugonjwa wa corona imeweka walimu wa shule za kibinafsi na wale wa BOM in the public schools in a very difficult situation, because from the month of March until now and until January, these teachers will not receive any salary. They have never received any salary and they are going through very difficult time. They lack food and they are facing an imminent starvation. Most of them have been kicked out of their houses because they are unable to pay house rents. So they are really, really suffering. So my appeal to the county government of Mombasa, to the national government, is to come up with intervention measures to ensure that these teachers are not starved, to make sure that these teachers, their sufferings are mitigated.
Our private school teachers, they are really suffering because hawana mishahara na hawezi kujimudu kimaisha. Kwa hivyo kama chairman nilikuwa naomba kwa unyenyekevu rais wetu pia afikirie hawa walimu ambao wamekuwa wakifanya kazi nzuri sana kufundisha watoto wa Wakenya.
Hivi tayari wamekaa kama karibu miezi 4, wengine wamekaa bila malipo. So sisi tunaomba serikali ya county, vile vile serikali kuu iingilie kati swala la walimu ambao ni walimu wa kibinafsi ambao wanafundisha katika shule za kibinafsi. Tunajua hali yao ni ngumu na wao ni Wakenya kama Wakenya wengine, na wengi wamefungiwa nyumba, wengi wamekuwa katika hali ngumu, hawana chakula na hii imeanza kuleta stress na depression kwa some of them katika hali kama hii. Kwa hivyo kwetu ni kuomba kama watetezi wa haki za kibinadamu kwamba serikali iwakumbuke walimu katika shule za kibinafsi na vile vile iwakumbuke walimu ambao wako katika ile system ya BOM.
Let's bring in NAT Secretary General Wilson Sosion joining us live from the NAT headquarters. Many thanks for your time on News Desk. The situation of the more than 300,000 teachers employed by private schools and those in public schools employed by boards of management is undoubtedly sad. Paint a picture for us of what the situation is on the ground. Sosion, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yeah, good afternoon. I can hear you.
Many thanks for joining us here on News Desk. We're speaking about the situation of more than 300,000 teachers employed by private schools and those in boards of management in public schools as well. The situation is rather sad. 4 months now without pay. What is the way forward here?
Yeah, I wish to state very clearly the position of the International Teachers Task Force under the UN and UNESCO. That has stated very clearly that employers and government should not use the COVID-19 not to pay teachers under employment. And it says very clearly the employers must preserve employment and wages and not to use a crisis as an excuse to lower standards and norms and to push aside the labor rights of teachers. Teachers under employment by private schools must be maintained by private schools. Their salaries, wages, and remuneration must be met by private schools without an excuse. This one is very clear. We cannot push and pass it back to the government.
But I mean,
When
let's be clear
established-
with the economic situation in the country. Private schools have made it clear that they depend on fees paid by parents.
No,
for them
we are
to
making
pay
it
these
very
teachers.
clear. We are making it very. This one, there is no excuse at all, and we urge the media and the public not to try and protect the private school investors and owners from running away from their responsibility. While we appreciate that it's hard economic times, they must find, even at the basic minimum, ways of maintaining wages for the teachers who have been serving faithfully in their institutions. And so there is no excuse at all that they have to do it. And that responsibility cannot be pushed to the government. Number two, teachers under the boards of management have been assigned duties by a government entity. And we must be alive to the provisions of the Constitution of Kenya, which the people of Kenya gave themselves unto and assigned the responsibility of employing and remunerating teachers to the Teacher Service Commission.
All right, so let's just have
there is need, during this crisis, there is need to map out the number of teachers under employment by the boards of management, and maybe it is time the Teacher Service Commission takes over the remuneration and wages of these teachers. Because if we compel the boards of management to continue looking for resources, we are passing back the burden to the households. It is time for us to think and do things right and structure them as per the provision of the law and the Constitution.
All right, so Sion, let's get back to the private school
but
teachers
the bottom
here,
line is
because you make it very clear that they cannot. You make it very clear that private school owners and investors cannot pass on this responsibility to the government, but they've made it very clear that they may be facing permanent closure in the face of COVID-19. They're now asking the government to give them a stimulus package to help them retain these teachers. But if they cannot then push this responsibility to the government, what is the solution? What is the solution for private schools where you stand?
That is fundamentally wrong. The private school owners should not use the salary crisis to demand for money from the state. It's very clear. The state shall use the taxpayers' money prudently and appropriately to finance education publicly. That's the truth. The private school owners, while establishing their business, should consider the necessary contingency measures in times of crisis to sustain their workers.
Right.
This is not, it is wrong and immoral to try and use the crisis to demand money from the state. And of course, not to pay. It cannot be a window of excuse to humiliate, punish, and not to pay the salaries the teachers who have faithfully served in those entities.
So
we know the private schools levy money. The private schools levy money primarily for tuition purposes, including salaries.
We have only been out
for the months of April, May, and June. It is only April, May, and June, and parents paid fees for the month of first term. So it's wrong to encourage immoral activities that the private schools can try and push or use the crisis to attract money from government.
Let's talk about the situation for support staff
in the public sector.
In these schools. We've had situations, even in Kakamega, where burglaries have been reported in schools because the support staff, the guards employed to guard these institutions, have not been paid for the last 3-4 months. What is the case regarding their welfare?
And those are the specific issues that we invite the government to address, where it has responsibility over public schools. Because we are talking about wiring of capitation to schools so that salaries can be paid for the support staff in the various schools. That is a very genuine situation which we've called on the government and which we are engaging the ministry about, so that at least the personnel, the school support personnel across our public institutions can be maintained to take care of our institutions and engage in the necessary essential services that are required in all our learning institutions during this period of closure. We will need the schools back in January, and therefore we must have the necessary personnel in place, and of course the workers who are on permanent terms and employment in the public institution should enjoy and access their salaries. And this is where the issue of free day secondary and free primary education funds needs to be wired on the basis of the salaries of the support staff. That's a very genuine situation. It is what government has to do, and it is what we are pushing.
Many thanks. That is Wilson Sosion, the NAT Secretary General. They're speaking to us about the welfare of teachers and private schools. He says cannot push that responsibility of paying their teachers to the government, even in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. It is a report we're closely following up on here on KTN News. Elsewhere, 31.6% of households in Kenya paid rent in time in the month of May. 30.9% who usually pay rent on time were unable to pay rent in May. Majority of Kenyans, who constitute 61%, who were unable to pay rent, they cited reduced income as the main reason. These are just some of the revelations by Treasury CS Ukuri Atani as he launched his second survey on the COVID-19 pandemic economic impact on Kenyan households.